But here's the thing. If you were Tua and you had landed Nick Saban and then Brian Flores, and you also played at a high school in Hawaii that, didn't lose a game for 3 years, football wouldn't look as hard. And frankly, it's not if you get the right coach. Bill Parcells, 4 times, took bad teams, made them good within a year. Urban Meyer, 4 times, took college football programs, bad 1 year, turned them all around in 1 year. When you get the right coach, football's not that hard. You don't even need to land a great quarterback. Brian Flores has turned it around with Ryan Fitzpatrick. They were 0-7 to start the year. They finished the year better than New England. Look at the Giants with Joe Judge. They're turning it around without Saquon Barkley and with Daniel Jones, who nobody classifies at this point as even a good quarterback. I'm not saying finding that coach is easy, but Brian Flores had a very good reputation. I heard a story about a week ago that the only thing that held him back is he'd never officially been a coordinator for a year, but he blew everybody away in interviews. People were just worried he's never even been a coordinator. He needs 1 year as a coordinator. People were worried. Sean McVay blew people away. Look at what Sean McVay did with the Rams. He didn't even do it in one season. He did it in an off season. They went from awful to 3-0 in September. So this idea, if you played in Honolulu where Tua did and never lost a high school game, or maybe lost one, and then you went to Nick Saban, and then you went to Brian Flores, when you get the right coach, it's not difficult. Joe Judge and Brian Flores, without great quarterbacks, turned around the culture in 8 weeks. That was it. By the middle of the season, about Thanksgiving, you looked at Miami and you're like, Joey and I kept saying this. We're like, oh, they're going to be a tough out when they get some players. Like, they're well coached. Giants right now. I picked them last week to win. I said, you watch the Giants play. They just have to get more dynamic offensively. Saquon Barkley, get a star receiver or a big-time young talent receiver. That's a football team that wins division and win games in the playoffs. So this idea that, football has been kind of easy. First of all, Tua works really hard, and he's got some natural instinctive gifts. And he went from the best West Coast football program to the best college football program to the best young football coach. It's not that hard. I've watched it my entire life. The bad coaches make it hard. I mean, Andy Reid got fired in Philadelphia. There were 8 teams that hired coaches. But it was the Kansas City Chiefs, who have stable, smart ownership forever since I've been a kid. They've been viable. They've always been viable. They were on the phone with Andy Reid within 3 hours and had a contract signed in 4 days. He was available to a bunch of teams. What a shock. The one well-run team hired Andy Reid, who had a history of 5 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl appearance. This league is not that tough. It's not easy to find the right coach and the right GM, but once you do, Sean McDermott turned around Buffalo fast. Sean McVay turned around the Rams in an off season. Joe Judge and Brian Flores, 8 weeks. You're like, those are really good football coaches. It ain't that difficult. There's a lot of bad GMs. It's like anything else. There's a lot of bad in the NFL and about 10% really good. The key, of course, is finding the really good. But McVay had a reputation. Flores had a reputation. People knew about them. Kyle Shanahan was on the market for a lot of teams. It took too long for him to get the Niners job. Everybody knew Kyle Shanahan. He made 4 different quarterbacks Pro Bowlers. Joy of the news.
No. Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Through the Seahawks' first 7 games, Russell Wilson only turned the ball over 6 times. In the last 2 games, he's committed 7 turnovers, but he says he's not going to let his recent struggles slow him down.
You got to just keep climbing. And, I think Vince Lombardi said something about that one time. I think he talked about just, the man who's on top of the mountain didn't just get there. The guys that can keep getting up and keep swinging, those are the players and those are the teams that keep overcoming. And what I do know about myself, I'm an overcomer. I'm a guy that just, I've been doubted before. One thing about me is, I'm going to keep swinging.
I like the confidence, but
he's not getting a lot of help. Does everybody realize they outplayed Arizona in Arizona and had the game won, if not for a personal foul call on special teams? So Russ was great that game. Now, they got rolled in Buffalo. Nobody would dispute that, and he struggled last week. But how about if Seattle didn't 2 years ago with their first pick completely whiff at running back? If they'd gotten Nick Chubb, who was available, and every scout I knew liked Chubb as the second best back to Saquon Barkley in the draft. It was understood among all my scouts. Seattle could have had him, didn't. If they had Nick Chubb today, Chris Carson backing up, and they had a running game, you wouldn't be solely relying on Russ saving you on every offensive possession.
Well, that's kind of what, like, I understand what he's talking about. Like, he doesn't want to lose his confidence, and he shouldn't. But what Russ is kind of falling into now, and you can see this with the turnovers, and this is similarly what I think is happening with Carson Wentz to some degree, is that when you have to press because everything is on you because of injuries or because the rest of the team's not playing well or because they haven't put the right pieces around you, and you're the sole star that's supposed to save everything, you start trying to win the game on every throw.
It's called hero ball.
Yeah, you start trying to make these 21-point plays, and that doesn't exist.
This is the brilliance of the Kansas City Chiefs. They are making themselves less reliant on Mahomes. He's throwing less than the league average.
They can win multiple ways.
That's what New England did. Like, we've got Brady. Let's have him throw 29 times, not 38. It means 8-9 more chances for him to get hit. So the smart teams want a great quarterback, but they don't want to be overwhelmingly. He can't be a life preserver.
Well, it's not just the running back injuries, which obviously have been awful this season. The Seahawks offensive line has allowed 30 sacks this season, tied for fourth most in the NFL, and allowed 104 pressures, which is the fourth worst, and 11.6 pressures per game, which is the third worst this season. So the offensive line is not helping him out. So it's not just that they can't establish a running game because of the injuries. The offensive line, no one can function in that space. Like, you see what happens when Joe Burrow has minimum level protection.
He gets crushed.
They can win a game. But if you get sacked 4 times a game, you can't. It doesn't matter who you are. You can't. You don't use the pocket gets so small. You feel like you have no time, and then you start to press, you roll out, and that's what's happening there. So there's been a lot of discussion about what the 49ers will do with Jimmy Garoppolo in the quarterback position next season, but Kyle Shanahan says not only he hopes to get Jimmy G back on the field in 2020, but he also expects him to be the starter moving forward.
I expect Jimmy to be our starter next year. I mean, I expect him to come and play with us this year. We have 6 games left. We are not out of the playoffs yet. We got to do one game at a time, and I hope Jimmy can come back and be a part of that. But to think that we've made any decisions on anybody going into the future isn't the case. Jimmy's won a lot of games for us this year. It's a lot harder to win games when he's not here, and just hoping we can get him back.
I cannot wait. Honestly, it used to be the NBA offseason was as good as the regular season. I cannot wait to see what the Colts do at quarterback, what the Niners do at quarterback, because there's some rosters here. They got big Minnesota is stuck with Cousins for, they extended him.
And
Atlanta
this draft.
This is going to be they're going to have like 6 huge quarterback stories. By the way, if Jameis wins 4 games in New Orleans, then he's going to have either a huge market or be the Saints' next guy.
I mean, we got pretty lucky this football offseason with the moves that were made and the stories that were out there, especially considering we didn't have any sports for 5 months. But this offseason may be crazier than the last one.
I think it will be.
And that's with Tom Brady moving around. But Shanahan's record with the 49ers in games that are not started by Jimmy G is 5-23.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's understandable why he would still feel some loyalty to Jimmy G.
Well, and if it's not Jimmy G, then you go out and get somebody you think's better than Jimmy G, because you can't win in this league even if you're Kyle. And it's not like Mullins is terrible. He's okay.
But in this division,
Can't do it.
It's not going to work. Jimmy's currently in his 3rd year of his 5-year deal that runs through 2022. He'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2023. He has a cap hit of $26.9 million in 2021 and $27 in 2022, but there's no guaranteed money left on his deal. So they would free up $24 million in base salary if they chose to cut him or trade him before June 1st. So they do have a little bit of flexibility. The undefeated Steelers have a big Thanksgiving matchup with the Ravens next week, so it could be easy to overlook the one-win Jags on Sunday. But Mike Tomlin is taking this week's opponent very seriously, and he is not buying the idea of the Steelers walking into a trap game in Jacksonville.
This is the NFL, and more than anything, the guys know my attitude regarding that. We're not a Big Ten team playing a MAC opponent this week. Every time we step into a stadium, we're playing professionals, players and coaches. And we got a ridiculous level of respect for that.
I love Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin's sound bites are my favorite. He's right. Like, look, you saw what happened with the Packers last week. It could have very easily been a really, really bad loss for them.
Think how great Alabama is. All the players they put in the NFL, how many are great? 5. That's a dominant dynasty. The Jaguars would destroy Alabama by 40.
It would be 150 to 2. I mean, it would not happen. I understand it, right? Like the Jaguars are obviously not a good team, but
they're not a good NFL team.
A good NFL team, yes. I mean, they pushed the Packers. They were leading in the fourth.